don't consider myself a great cook. Steak, every time I try to make steak, it's burnt and overdone. I don't like to use a cast iron skillet. Still, I make meals every day for myself and my husband. And while I don't think I'm a great cook or the best cook, there are meals that I can cook the hell out of. And by that I mean meals that I have mastered that taste good every single time and nourish me in the way that it needs to. And that's the thing about cooking or food and exploring food is that when you approach food with a curious mind and explorative manner, it becomes less about perfection, less about needing to do what everybody else is doing or be like other folks, and more about what brings joy, what brings satisfaction, what makes sense for you. And that's why I enjoy cooking. Honestly, cooking for me is calming, it's creative, and at the same time, I can honestly just zone out while I'm cooking. And why I enjoy cooking so much, or why it is now part of my everyday process, besides needing to eat, because your girl likes to eat. I don't always remember to eat, thanks to ADHD, but I like to eat. I like my food. And I have my preferences for the kind of food I like and the way I like the food. You know, certain textures I tend to avoid. But why I enjoy cooking so much, as I've stated before, and I will probably repeat myself many times, is it gives me a chance to see what's possible. Like, sure, there's a cake that I want to make, and that's being a baker. Being a baker is a different thing, I think. It's a different skill set, but the same approach, being curious and exploring it. So while I might think a cake needs to look a certain way based on the recipe I'm following and pictures that I've seen, it don't always turn out that way. But I'm always still going to give it the best shot. And I always laugh after myself because my philosophy when it comes to putting meals together or trying new things, new recipes, or recipes in general is see what happens. It's either going to be really good or it's going to be terrible. What can you do? You're only out some ingredients. And in this economy, I'm trying not to be just out of ingredients and not enjoy the thing the ingredients were used to make. But it happens. And why I'm even sharing this, I have no idea other than the fact that cooking is part of my everyday. It's part of why I have this channel. I have yet to show, not yet, but I don't show a lot of recipes that much on this channel yet. And that's because, honestly, I don't create new recipes. A lot of what I do and a lot of the meals that I make are people's recipes that I have made and tweak them to suit my preferences. So I am dairy free. I'm also trying to maintain a low saturated fat kind of diet. Thanks perimenopause. So many layers to being who I am or being a woman, believe me. But with those things in mind, a lot of the food that I make is based on things I've thrown together that I might not have a recipe for, or an idea I get from either videos I've seen or recipes I've seen, or a recipe that I've taken from somebody and tweaked it. It's the person's recipe, so I don't claim it as my own. And even as a food photographer, and why I say if you look my Instagram bio, it says recipe tester, and that's because that is what I am. I test recipes and I'm not recreating anything or recreating the wheel. I'm not taking recipes and I'm not developing recipes. Yes, I develop my own, but honestly, I'm just too lazy. And I don't even want to call it lazy. I don't know what it is, but it's not very appealing to me to develop a recipe. I'm great at testing. I like to test and tweak to see how something works for me and my preferences. So that's what I enjoy about cooking, just that curious nature. I talk about steak, and so cooking steak or let me back up. Pan searing anything for me is no, I don't like to do it. I hate to do it. For two reasons. One, I hate grease splatter. That's the other thing about being a home cook or being me. Let me say that. I'm a cook, somebody who spends a lot of time on the stove, sit behind me, and I hate grease splatter. I don't know if it's my thing with mess, although I can create mess, but just grease splatter for me is very irksome and I avoid it. That's the truth. I will give it a try every now and then, but it's something I avoid. So I hate grease splatter, one. And two, I think my patience for letting things sear is non-existent. But also when it comes to like steak, for example, and they need to use a lot of butter, again, because I'm trying not to use a lot of saturated fat, it's just something that I'm not going to do, use rather. And so I don't see the point. Maybe I'll change my mind later on. But for now, pan searing, specifically things like steak, or if I'm trying to do salmon, that's why I use an air fryer. See? That that that's why I have an air fryer, because I refuse to do any form of pan frying. And that includes deep frying. Hate it. I hate doing it. I might like the outcome sometimes when I deep fry, but I hate the process of deep frying anything. So that's where I am with calling myself a not so great cook. So while I might not be a great cook at certainly pan searing or using the cast iron, let's talk about the cast iron skillet. I don't know. I have a cast iron skillet that, frankly, I have two to be exact, a big one and a smaller one. And for the life of me, no matter how many videos I watch about, seasoning it, I can't. I don't get the results that I see people talk about. You use it often enough and season it, and season it. We'll season it, and I've done that. I've been doing that, and my food always ends up sticking to the pan, or it ends up, if I use oil for example, all of it pushes to the sides and the middle is left dry, and then the food either sticks or burns. And even with the heat low, cast iron is a headache. So cast iron, using a cast iron, and pan searing and grease splatter are two things that make me and frying anything not the best of friends. But I will cook, braise, I will steam things. I use a non-stick pan, and even then I still avoid pan searing. How we end up on the topic of me pan searing? Yes, because I talk about the fact that I am not the best cook, but there are certain meals that I am great at cooking. And as a Jamaican, sometimes, or if you're Jamaican, one of the things that's often expected, and I don't know if this is a self-expectation, but just the environment, community of being Jamaican, is that, cooking certain Jamaican meals. Cooking Jamaican meals requires effort, and you have to do all of these things. You have to cook these things from scratch and whatnot. And a lot of recipes online show people doing things from scratch, and that I have no problem with. I just don't want to do it. So a lot of Jamaican meals I don't make because it takes more time than I'm willing to put out. There are some times that I will do it, but for the most part, no. So things like making oxtail, I don't make it. One, because I'm the only person that's gonna eat it, and two, the process is just more involved than I want, and three, it's again saturated, higher in saturated fat than I am interested in consuming at this moment in time. So things like oxtail, things like rundown, things like I can rank it rundown, not too bad, but I'm just not gonna make it anyway. Things like stew peas. Now, stew peas usually involves pigtail. One, I ain't go look out. I am not going to go around looking for pigtail. I also live where I'm not going to find a lot of Jamaican foods quite easily, or I don't have access to a lot of Jamaican staples or types of foods and meats too. So Stew peas with pig tail, you're not gonna get me to make. However, a vegan stew peas, I will make. Same ingredients, just minus the pork and salt. It's not as salted. But I will make a vegan stew peas, and that's a much simpler process. Rice and peas is another thing, and that's a staple of Jamaican cuisine. Rice and peas. And we call it peas even though it's kidney beans. That's just what we call beans in general, peas. So whether it's a bean or a pea, for Jamaicans, we call it peas. And rice and peas in particular, especially on the stove top, I'm not I'm not great at cooking it on the stove top. I will, however, knock the hell out of it in an instant pot. I have two instant pots, right? And those two uh, pots are my workhorses. And I will cook rice and peas, any kind of rice and peas, gung peas. I can use lentils in there and make a killer rice and peas. That's just me utilizing what I have access to make it enjoyable, but also make the process something that's not terrible or time consuming. I just set it in there and literally forget it. Put the same things together. I just don't have to watch it. Unlike when you cook it on the stove top. This is not to say that I couldn't cook it on the stove top. I would just prefer not to. If I have to, I will. But that's just another example of Jamaican food that I will take a shortcut for. What other Jamaican foods? Ackee and saltfish is not something I eat a lot, simply because I don't like ackee in the can, to be honest. I will use it if I really, really crave it, but I will, it's not my preference. So unless I can get canned ackee, and quite frankly, I have to order it off of some place like Amazon or I think I might can get it on Carib Shopper. I've never ordered from there, but very few places that I can get it unless somebody sends me a couple cans of ackee. Ackee and saltfish. I love ackee and saltfish, but because I don't have access, I don't make it that often. The saltfish, interestingly enough, I can get quite easily because we have Latina or Mexican markets as well as the Asian markets, and I can get, they call it bacalao in the Mexican market, and I can get it at the Asian grocery store. So getting saltfish is however expensive. My God, I don't even get the thick meaty piece, right? But anyways, cooking Jamaican food as somebody living in the Pacific Northwest, Seattle as a city, for those who don't know where the Pacific Northwest is, just think of Seattle, Washington. You've heard of Seattle? Yes, I live in the same state as Seattle, Washington is in. That Seattle is in. And a lot of Jamaican foods are just not accessible. There is a Jamaican market that I have to drive almost an hour. And no, I ain't gonna do that unless I really, really, really want something. So unless somebody is coming to visit, or I have somebody ship some things who they might be in the US and can ship it to me, then a lot of Jamaican foods I don't make because the ingredients I don't have access to. So learning to make food that tastes good is important. And so knowing to cook certain basic things helps. So cooking rice and peas, stewed peas as an example, using saltfish and cooking it up with, say, cabbage is one way to get a taste of home without it being, what I would typically want. Because cabbage and saltfish is also a staple in Jamaica. Things like baked beans. I don't use sausage anymore. I just make the baked beans and we'll have that as part of a bigger meal or as part of a meal. And so why I brought up Jamaican cooking is because of what's typically involved in Jamaican cooking, and it's a labor of love. Honestly, you will see a lot of Jamaican, if you watch a lot of the food content creators, they give you all the things. Making coconut milk from scratch, as great as that is and taste, me not grate no coconut. No, me not do it. So I will use the can, right? I will buy the canned coconut milk and use that. Things like that, you just have to accept that or not accept, but come to terms or acknowledge, rather, that's the word I'm looking for. Acknowledge what you're willing and what you're not willing to do to nourish yourself. So while I claim my Jamaican heritage and um, title, I will do that unapologetically. How I choose to incorporate Jamaican food into my cooking is entirely up to me. So I see a lot of wars online about people who, you're not really Jamaican, or you're not really cooking Jamaican if you don't do XYZ, or the best is if you use it fresh or you make it from scratch. We all don't have the time. We all don't want to spend the time um, to to do that, and that's okay. For those who can and willingly do that, great. For those who don't want to, there are options. And part of my mission, or the thing I want to communicate to folks, is there's always a solution, one, and you always have an option. And the option that you take doesn't necessarily mean you're less than. So it doesn't mean you're less of a cook if you don't know how to, you can't chop fast. It does not mean you're less of a cook if you don't like to pan sear and can't pan sear properly or use the cast iron. It does not mean you're less of a cook. It means you're working within your skill set. And that's another thing that I talk about often, is that working with the skill set you have, in addition to things like your capacity, the time that you have, the ingredients that you're working with, matter to your cooking process. So we all can't cook quickly because, again, we might not have the skill set that enables us to be very efficient. We all can't cook, steak because, again, skill set, the desire, that type of thing, whether or not you even want to eat steak, matters. So you choose the option that works best for you. And that's always something that I keep at the back of my head, if not at the forefront of my mind, that doing what works for you is key to being in the kitchen. And I don't engage in the food wars, at least not anymore. Like, other than claiming certain foods taste exactly like certain foods, outside of that, which I will, that hill, the hill of them not being the same, I will die on. Choose what works for you. Honestly, that's what I have to say about being your own best cook. Um, Whether you're the only person you're cooking for or you're cooking for a family, find ways that work for you. And speaking of ways that work for you, find what works for you in the ways that work for you. So it's one thing to find what works. Finding ways for things to work requires a system. And I use the word system loosely because we all have a system. So when it comes to like making meals for me, I run through my head typically the types of foods I want to make in a week. So this week coming up, I'm going grocery shopping. I'm gonna think, okay, we normally eat salmon. I'm gonna eat some chicken breast. Do I need chicken breast? I run through the list of meals or foods I want to have and incorporate into meals during the week. Then I go to my fridge and look at what I have, what I don't have, do an inventory so I can know what to pick up. Same thing for checking my pantry. And then when I bring those things home, it's one of two things. I either immediately pull things out that I am going to make during the week. So I will maybe parcel up the chicken if I buy this big parcel of chicken, which I do when I go to Costco, parcel up the fish, and either take out what I want and leave it in the fridge and put the rest in the freezer. Anything that needs to be cooked for a couple days, I will put that aside. So I know that come tomorrow or later, when I get into the kitchen to cook, these are the things that I'm going to give my attention to. And that system keeps me from, one, buying food that I don't need. And it's very important because one thing I hate is spoiled food in my fridge and having excess. I tend to want to cook off all the food that I have in my kitchen because food waste is important to me, or not creating excess waste of food is something that's a value of mine. So cooking involves not just your skill set and energy and capacity, but also having a system, and you create that system. I can't tell you what the system is. You have to come up with that system. And for me, it's important that I follow that system. I might be to follow it to the T sometimes, or sometimes I might skip a step or modify a step rather. Let me put it that way, not skip it, just modify it, because it enables me to then move forward to the cooking process. So I might not parcel out everything. For example, I might just put it all in the freezer, and then on the day I need to cook, I pull out what I need, and take out the meat out of the freezer and put it out in the fridge. I will do that because, again, I'm the person in charge of cooking. So uh, I might do that. That's a step in the system that I abbreviate or modify. So having your system is important. It makes the cooking process a little easier, certainly less stressful. For me, I don't worry about time, because all these talk about, all these folks talking about making a meal in 10 minutes or 15 minutes. That's great, and if that's something that appeals to you, that's also great. You do what works for you. But for me, taking the time element out of it, certainly as far as making sure, okay, I need to get this done in 30 minutes. Sure, there are days when I need to get this done in a certain time. However, when it comes to cooking, for me, again, because cooking is calming, cooking is a creative process, is an outlet for me, I remove the time factor. It's going to take the time it takes. So whether if it takes me 10 minutes to make it, great. I can enjoy my meal earlier. If it takes me 45 minutes to make it, also great. It means that I'm going to have a good meal when I'm done. So for me, removing the time element or the time restriction works for me. It makes cooking far more easeful and far more enjoyable. So, am I a terrible cook? No. I mean, not the best cook, but there are meals that I'm absolutely great at cooking. Maybe that's the same for you. If it is, I say keep on being great at those meals and never be afraid to try some of the meals that you might not be the best at. So I may try, cooking some steak or pan searing something every now and then, but then it just reminds me that I don't like it. But I will never stop trying. And that's also the other piece of it, is to never stop trying. That's how you become a better cook. That's how cooking becomes less of a hassle. That's how cooking becomes more nourishing for you. Thanks for watching. Come back and catch me on the next episode, or catch me tomorrow. That's what I mean. Have a good day.